You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. Ohio voters face a full array of statewide contests, including governor, secretary of state, state auditor, etc. But of those, none may be more important this year as two races for seats on the Ohio Supreme Court. The problem with having judicial candidates as guests on Newsmakers is that the Judicial Code of Ethics severely restricts what they can say, including anything about issues and cases that might come before them, or speculations on the larger socio-political implications of their victories. As a result, discussions revolve around a person's biography and such broad philosophical statements that it is impossible to distinguish them from platitudes, with a few code words sprinkled around. To try to get past those limitations, I've invited two people who can be a bit more frank and expansive, albeit partisan and spirited. The first race pits two women candidates against each other. The incumbent is Republican Justice Evelyn Stratton, who has been a member of the state Supreme Court since 1996. The challenger is Janet Burnside, a Democrat who has served as a judge on the Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court since 1991. In the second race, two non-incumbents vie for the seat being vacated by the retiring Justice Andrew Douglas. The Democratic nominee is Hamilton County Municipal Court Judge Tim Black, who also ran for state Supreme Court in the year 2000. The Republican candidate is Maureen O'Connor, a former Common Pleas judge in Summit County and the current lieutenant governor. My guests this morning are Michael Barrett, who is the chairman of the Hamilton County Republican Party, and Tim Burke, the chairman of the Hamilton County Democratic Party. Mike, Tim, welcome to Newsmakers.
Good morning. It's nice to be here.
Let's begin, because I think a lot of people simply don't know who these candidates are. They may know one, but not the others. Let's begin by talking about who they are in some depth. Tim, let's start with a Tim Black, Maureen O'Connor race. And Tim Black, because he's from Hamilton County. Let's talk about him. Who is he?
Tim's a very bright, very articulate, and very fair-minded judge who served on the municipal court bench here in Cincinnati for about 9 years now. He's a Harvard graduate, got his judicial degree from Chase College of Law. He's been a teacher. His wife's a full-time teacher. His family he's raising right here in the North Avondale community of Cincinnati. A top-notch candidate who ran an exceptionally strong statewide race 2 years ago and finished just out of the money.
Okay, a very close race. If I remember, it was about a spread of about 4 points. So it was statewide. For somebody who never run statewide, it was a very close race. What's he known for? As a judge, as I read his biography and things, it seems like children's issues are a real concern of his.
Clearly children's issues has been something that he has been hailed for. He's also been awarded for his work with battered women, where he's been very well known both on the court and as a lawyer. He's a third-generation judge, for that matter, from a very well-known, very well-respected Cincinnati family.
Okay. Let's turn to his opponent, Maureen O'Connor, who is very well known. She is the lieutenant governor right now, but as I read her biography, she's stressing other parts of her career as well.
All right. I mean, I think the voters need to know that as this is a Supreme Court race, what her judicial experience is. She is lieutenant governor right now, and she's done a great job in that post, and she has been in charge of the Ohio security in the governor's office for since 9/11. But more importantly, what the voters need to know is that she's got a wealth of experience. She was a magistrate in the Summit County Probate Court, and it dealt with a number of cases.
And Summit County is Akron, for people who don't know the counties. Okay.
And that court deals with obvious traditional probate issues, adoptions, things like that. So she's got a wealth of experience at that level. She was also a common pleas judge in Summit County, which means she covered the whole gamut of cases: felony trials, felony murders, major civil cases, matters in controversy. And she also importantly served as the Summit County prosecutor. So she has really covered the spread of judicial experience and background, and that's what she's running on, is her judicial experience.
In fact, as I read the dueling biographies, and anybody can go to these websites, if you look at the dueling biographies, one of the things that the O'Connor bio stresses is that she was a common pleas judge and therefore dealt with felonies And it's a subtle way, and sometimes not so subtle, of saying Tim Black is a municipal court judge and therefore hasn't handled felony cases.
Well, the Cleveland Bar Association, which is the largest metropolitan bar association in the state of Ohio, rated all of the candidates for the Ohio Supreme Court race. They found O'Connor to be not recommended, while they highly recommended and preferred Tim Black. There is an issue about her judicial experience because, frankly, it's pretty slim. She only served on the Common Pleas Court up there for just a couple of years and did not complete her term.
And one of the arguments is that she has spent her time running for, and that's what I was going to say, when you read Tim Black's bio, the slam against Maureen O'Connor is that she has spent most of her time in the last 15 years running for political office rather than tending the judicial bench.
Well, Tim has also spent a considerable amount of time running for political office. As you point out at the top of the show, he ran for Supreme Court before. And I think that Maureen's experience does speak for itself. The Bar Association that Tim talked about may be largely Democratic. It's a possibility. I don't know if he'd fess up to that or not. But the fact of the matter is Maureen has handled serious felony cases, and she's handled probate cases, and she's been a prosecutor dealing with crimes of all sorts, and also running the civil division in that office. I mean, as the prosecutor, she was in charge of that. And Tim is a good guy, but the bottom line is Tim has never handled anything more serious than a misdemeanor offense. And the cases in controversy, the limit in municipal court, I think, was it still $10,000? So, you know, the most important civil case he would have handled would have had a $10,000 cap.
Let's take a look at the other race now, and we'll come and take a look at the larger implications of both these races at the end. But let's take a look at the Evelyn Stratton, Janet Burnside race. Mike, Evelyn Stratton, this is probably, even though she's an incumbent on the Supreme Court right now, probably most voters don't know their Supreme Court judges that well. Well, who is she?
Most voters don't know judges that well.
Right.
And there's also fall off at the bottom of the ticket. And if anybody walks away from this program with the message, it's vote the ticket and, you know, finish your electoral choices, because there's a major drop off. I think Tim and I would both support people paying attention to those races. But Eve has probably one of the most interesting stories of any candidate I've ever been around. She was born to parents who were missionaries. At a very early age, she moved to Southeast Asia. She was educated in missionary schools. Because of some of the difficulties in Vietnam and Laos and things, she had to move around. And she made her way back to the States at the age of 18 with about $500 in her pocket. She was able to work her way through Ohio State, work her way through law school, and she became the first woman elected to the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas.
And Franklin County is Columbus.
Is Columbus. I mean, major accomplishments. And she's done it because she's intuitively smart. She has good people skills. Her nickname, I think you may know, is the Velvet Hammer. She just has a mannerism and a way of dealing with people, and she's got a wealth of experience. And her personal story, sometimes you measure people, how they'll perform on the bench, by their personal story, and hers is one of fortitude and character.
Tim, Janet Burnside from Cuyahoga County, from the Cleveland area.
Judge Burnside's an Ohio farm girl. Grew up on the farms of rural Ohio, moved to Cuyahoga County, worked her way through public schools throughout the state. Of her entire career, her educational background was all through Ohio's public education system. Earned her law degree. She's been on the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas for 12 years now. An enormously well-respected judge up there, and is doing exceptionally well in this race as word about her qualifications begins to spread around the state of Ohio.
Now let's shift. Besides these backgrounds, these bios of these four people, there's a lot at stake in this race. There was a lot at stake in the Supreme Court races 2 years ago. There's a lot at stake. There's 2 seats up. In your minds, what's the essential thing that's at stake in these 2 races as you see it? Mike?
The essential thing that's at stake is the continuation of philosophies. Although the races are technically nonpartisan, we both know the Republican Party supports 2 candidates and the Democratic Party supports 2 candidates. And the candidates come up through the system and they develop philosophy and ideals that are, akin to their party. That's why they end up choosing the party they're in. And Ohio has lost a lot of business over the past few years because of some of the rulings of our Supreme Court.
For example?
For example, the expansion of uninsured motor vehicle insurance and employee insurance. There have been some strange rulings, I think it's the Ponsner case, where insurance coverage has been expanded. Even if somebody is not in the scope of their employment, their employer may get hit for a claim if that person's involved in an accident, things like that. The school mandates from the Supreme Court.
School funding the Rolfe decision.
Oh, absolutely. These cost, in the school decision, you have a situation which would cost the taxpayers directly a large amount of money. In the insurance expansion cases, you have things that will indirectly cost the taxpayers a lot of money. What's happening is that Ohio, and remember, we're an industrial state. Ohio needs to have a friendly climate for businesses to park here and to work out of Ohio. And the climate has been such that some of the decisions have made it very tough for some of these businesses to survive. And I just want to finish one thing.
Okay.
And also the legislature has had to grapple a great deal with the school funding issue and things like that.
Tim, how do you see
what
this?
is at stake is the control of the Ohio Supreme Court and the issue of checks and balances in state government as a whole. The court hasn't been controlled by some rabid band of Democrats, as Mike implies. In fact, the court has been controlled by a bipartisan group of 4 judges, 2 of whom are Democrat, 2 of whom are Republican.
One of whom is Andrew Douglas.
Who is leaving, and that's why...
He's a Republican, but he's voted with, on the school issue, he's voted with the majority.
That is really why the control of the court and the direction the court is going in is at stake in this election. And issues like the protection of workers, the protection of injured parties in lawsuits, the whole question of education and educational funding is truly at stake. If we do not have a court that continues on its same course, and we end up with a legislature that is still controlled in both houses by the Republican Party and a governor who is still Republican, there is no checks and balances left anymore. The court will go in a radically right direction. There are already fundraising letters being sent out by the governor, by the Attorney General of Ohio, to business leaders across the state, urging that they fund the Stratton campaign because she is the most pro-business member of the court. It's fine to be pro-business. What the court needs to be is balanced.
Okay, I need to follow up on that because Tim, in fact, just pointed out maybe the major thing that's at stake. The job of the court is not to make law. The job of the court is not to be an activist court and say, here's the way we think it ought to be. The job of the court is to follow the rule of law, to follow precedent, and apply it to the cases that come in front of them. And if those cases that come in front of them as a result of a legislative act, their job is not to say, well, you know, that's a bad piece of legislation.
But isn't, in fact, on the school funding case, the Republican leadership has been playing politics with the court by delaying acting on the Rolfe decision, you know, in 3 different decisions by the Supreme Court, and this is the second round of Supreme Court elections where they're trying to change the court in order to get that decision changed.
I would say they're delaying the implementation of something they know will bankrupt the state. So
Tim,
they're working.
we have less than a minute.
The job of the court is also to safeguard the constitutional rights of the citizens of the state of Ohio, even against a legislature that would otherwise be out of control. That's why it's important that the control of the court not shift.
You got to love this guy, but it's off base. I mean, we do not want to see judges making the law. We want to see judges interpreting the law. That's their job, and that's their sworn duty.
Well, both of these races are very close, as we understand it, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens on November 5th. Thank you for being here this morning, and thank you for throwing some light on this, some real light on it. Stay tuned. After the break, the candidates in what was the region's closest contest 2 years ago. The rematch is November 5th. Welcome back. 2 years ago, the closest race in our area pitted Democrat Wayne Coates against Republican James Raussen for the Ohio House of Representatives. On election night, it was a dead heat. After 2 weeks of counting absentee votes, Coates squeaked out a 535-vote win. This year, the same 2 candidates are on the ballot. but the district's lines have been redrawn as a result of the census. What was called the 32nd District in 2000 is now the 29th House District and covers the northern portions of Hamilton County, including Blue Ash, Forest Park, Evendale, Reading, and other areas, but no longer extends south into Cincinnati as it did 2 years ago. Because of the schedule conflicts, I interviewed the two candidates separately. We talked about three primary issues in the interview: school funding, the state budget deficit, and health care. I have edited those discussions back to back so the responses look like they're talking with each other, although they weren't sitting together. Here is a major portion of those interviews.
We have three decisions now from the Supreme Court says that the legislature is not funding properly. And the primary component is the reliance on property tax because of the inequity. You know, I represent 8 school districts, and I have Wyoming who has an income tax because they don't have enough property tax. So the thing is we have to really start to fund our schools better. And I think when we do that, then we can reduce the strain on local property owners. But also, when we talk about education, there's other avenues of reform there because, you know, we need to really return local control to the parents.
But I guess the question in my mind is, has this discussion moved anywhere in 2 years?
No.
And why not?
Well, the powers to be, the power brokers in Columbus, who are of the party, the Republican Party, at the last decision of the Supreme Court, of course, Bob Taft and the President of the Senate and the Speaker had asked for the court to reconsider. The court at that time brought in a mediator, and I think they spent somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. He threw up his hands and said, "I'm leaving town. I can't deal with these people." And you got to understand that they've been in this gridlock now for over 12 years. And why should a plaintiff, when he has 3 decisions in his favor, why should he take anything less?
So, do you just see this gridlock continuing?
Well, I'm under the impression that each time this issue comes up on every election cycle, the powers to be try to get a majority of like-minded people on the Ohio Supreme Court, so therefore they can get the decision reversed. And now you have to ask yourself, are we into good governance? Are we talking about a constitutional issue? Or are we talking about a political issue?
What I don't think needs to be done is reallocating or redistribution of wealth of school districts as some people have proposed. You know, school districts, people move into certain communities because of the school system or the environment or the community that they live in. I think there still needs to be tweaking of the public school system to allow more state funds and revenues to reach the students. But I also believe that we don't need to redo the formula and allow good school districts to suffer because of their success.
And do you think that that can be done? That approach will be constitutional under these decisions that have been handed down by the Supreme Court has been clear, it seems to me, that something more significant has to change than has already changed.
Well, I disagree with the Supreme Court's approach in it. I think they're acting as a super legislative body, that they should allow the Department of Education and educated people who in the field handle the best way and send their recommendations to the state legislature and let us handle the situation rather than acting from a bench and legislating philosophy.
But in fact, their role is to be this sort of check. And Ohio's Supreme Court isn't any different than in a lot of other states. The ruling's there. What do? Do you try to change the makeup of the court?
Well, I don't want to get into how people should vote on the Supreme Court races, but I do think it's important that people have local control of their school districts, and I don't want that to be taken away from the equation. I mean, public school systems are made up of school districts where people elect local school board members to make the best decisions for their families and their students, and I don't think that should at all be taken away from the formula. If additional resources need to be found, we'll look at ways that we can allocate those funds. But let's not take away, let's not put control back into Columbus.
Another question that wasn't there 2 years ago, or at least not as clearly as it is now, and that is a budget deficit.
Oh my!
On the state level. What needs to happen, and is it different than what is happening in terms of dealing with that budget deficit?
Well, Dan, I tell you, I'm kind of conundrum to my party in a sense because actually I've voted with the Republicans 90% of the time. I've co-sponsored over 70% of their bills. But where we really differentiate is on the budget. You know, we have not funded it properly. We have done patchworks on it. This last biennium budget, we were $3 billion short. We have wiped out the rainy day fund. We have taken the tobacco settlement. We have even borrowed $345 million to shore it up. We've created an accounting that would make Arthur Anderson blush because they suspended payments in June to have a fund balance so they can carry over and balance the budget this year. The problem is as soon as we go back in session, we have to deal with a budget deficit, and that'll be our 5th budget adjustment. And next year, where we start in February.
So what do you think should happen?
You can't point party blame. What you have to do is find a bipartisan consensus and move forward because we are getting into a very crisis situation.
Is it going to require a tax increase?
Well, I can tell you that Senator Finan has said that will probably be something where you're going to have to consider. Although the governor's not talking that, he doesn't want to talk about the budget. He's the one who sets the tone on that, and then of course once he brings it to the legislature, we have to look at see what we can do with it.
National economy has hit states across the area. The last report I saw, 35 states are being affected with budget deficits. What we need to do is to dissect the state budget and see how it operates, kind of like a wristwatch. Let's see how all the parts are and maneuvering. I think there's duplications in our state agencies. I think there's duplications, for instance, in the Department of Insurance, in the Department of Bureau of Motor Vehicles. I think there's problems in our Department of Children's Services in the way it's being run and handled.
Do you think there's enough savings from those sorts of things to actually balance the budget?
Well, you know, this last month's report was positive for the state budget. The numbers came in that were good. We'll have to see at the end of this year how that number looks. If we need to make additional changes, those are options that we're going to have to look into seriously.
The other part of that potential equation is a tax hike.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine voting for a tax increase, and if so, what type of tax do you think ought to be raised?
No, I don't think that a tax increase is the solution. I've never seen any data presented before me that shows that a tax increase helps the state economy or any economy when you raise taxes.
One of the things that your opponent has talked a lot about during the campaign is the issue of medical care, of
Mm-hmm.
prescription drug policies on the state level. What's your approach to those kinds of health care issues?
Healthcare is extremely important. The thing is we're losing too many doctors here locally. And why are we losing too many doctors here locally? Because one, we don't have a health reimbursement program for insurance companies that's in place, that's satisfactory. We have neighboring cities that are outperforming Cincinnati in that area. And secondly, the cost of doing business for doctors is higher in the state of Ohio, believe it or not, than it is in the state of California. Professional liability insurance costs more in Ohio than it does in the state of Ohio. So we need to keep good doctors here.
Now, insurance is your area.
Mm-hmm.
That's your profession.
Right.
Is there anything as a state legislator you can do to change that?
Absolutely. We
What
need
could you
to.
do?
In the 1970s, California reformed, under Democratic Governor Jerry Brown, reformed medical malpractice in the state of California under a Democratic body in the mid-70s. Because of that, they have high quality care, the patients are protected, safety is still in force, and Ohio can do that same thing and keep high quality physicians in our area.
What I've accomplished these last 2 years have been to introduce very important legislation for health and wellness, prescription drug bulk purchasing. I've offered contraceptive drugs for women, kind of a parity just like men, because men can buy Viagra by prescription and it's covered, but yet prescription contraceptive drugs are not for women.
So this area of health and health insurance, prescription drugs, has been as I look at your record, has been a really significant area of interest and concern. Has there been much movement on that?
Well, on my particular legislation, what they were doing is taking a priority. I've co-sponsored also House Bill 4, which was Representative Hagan's bill, which it did pass out of the House, and actually it became a component of Senate Bill 261. So, you know, but what that does is using the Golden Buckeye card, you can go into the pharmacist and get a small discount. But those discounts can be utilized currently. What my bill was more or less is to go with the state and deal with the manufacturer so that it could lower the price at purchase from the manufacturer. So therefore, you get a significant savings. So therefore, you can pass that on to the uninsured that are currently uninsured.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week for the congressional race in northern Kentucky and the contest for Ohio Secretary of State. Have a good week.